If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Success is calling, don't ignore. Take control, unlock the door. Dreams ain't distant, they're right in sight. Sam will help you get it right. He's got the roadmap, got the plan, covering you. Take a stand, financial peace, a future bright. Sam Knickerbocker shows the light. Call 385-323-2493. Change your life, now's the time. Build your wealth, make it strong. Leave a legacy that lasts long. He's got the keys, no need to wait. Financial freedom. Yeah.
Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy Show. I'm your host, Sam Knickerbocker, and today we have an incredible guest, Lindsay Mitcheson, here with us from kind of across the world. It's a long flight from where I am, easily 8 hours. Got to go over the top of the world, under the world. I'm just kidding, not that far, just from across the pond. Swim. I don't know. That's a long swim. Over from England, though, over in North Yorkshire. So excited about her movement, what she's doing, what she's creating. As we were about to get on the podcast, she was just going to tell me, or I was going to ask a question about her parrot. Lindsay has a parrot that she just got recently that she adopted from somebody who had him for 47 years. So I want to know, what was the transition like for the parrot going from losing, because birds can be quite emotionally attached. They could pluck all their feathers. This is a weird way to start the podcast, but I think when you understand what Lindsay's doing, it actually is going to have a lot of correlation, I believe. So that's why I wanted to make sure we got this part on the podcast. Talk to us about the bird and what was that transition like in that adoption process?
So Blanco's previous owner became terminally ill, unfortunately, and she had to give him up through no fault of her own. I adopted him. He came to me. I would say the transition process for him to actually see me as being mom took about 4 months. It was quite a long period because obviously he had a huge amount of trust in his old owner. It took him time to build up trust in me. Am I staying here? All those things, because they think that a parrot has a mental age of about 4. So he's very emotionally attached now, very bonded to me. I'm very much mom now. He calls me mama. He calls me Poppet. So he'll cuddle up to me and say, "Hello, Poppet," and he's just a sweetheart. But it took him a long time. And I think he went through an amount of trauma actually being taken away from his previous owner. So we had, I would say, a lot of teething issues to go through because he's bitey, especially when they don't know anybody and when they don't trust anybody. So I had a couple of really good nips, really good bites, but not now. I mean, he wouldn't dream of biting me now. But yeah, I think it took about 4 months, really.
What when you think of the transition of this aspect, is there a way to prepare the bird for that, or did she just die and so it was like he had to be taken away, or was it something that she could have done sooner and transitioned sooner?
Possibly she could have. I mean, I don't know her real circumstance, but there's no way to prepare a bird for that. Just like there's no way to prepare a child for that. You can tell them and they'll go, "Yeah, where's my next spinach leaf?" But he literally, I'm sure it came as a massive shock to him. Yeah, there was a lot of, and you're right, when birds get stressed and when they get upset, they pluck their feathers out. And fortunately, he hasn't done that.
That's
hopefully
awesome.
Was a good sign that he transitioned a bit easier than he could have. But he hasn't plucked anything. He's not massively destructive. He likes to chew wood. So if you've got a door, or he nibbles the bottom of the doors, and he's still playful at 47. He's still cheeky.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. He was talking off screen, so I'm glad she came and showed the bird to me. Absolutely beautiful bird. So when you mentioned that he has like a mental age of 4, when I was a child, we had a family friend. They had tons of different birds in their basement, like not just 1 or 2, but probably 50 to 100 birds. And then on top of that one, they had like outside a bunch of pigeons, like the flying homing pigeons.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they love birds, but that was one thing I recognized with those birds. Like whenever we would move them from house to house, even they would get a lot of stress and anxiety.
Yeah. But probably because they were in what they would consider to be a flock, there would be a lot of security in that for them as well. So they probably coped with it better for all being together.
Yeah. But that's really cool that has happened. And I'm curious how, because nobody else knows what you do yet. I'm excited for them to find out. I'm excited for them to go follow you on Instagram and kind of join your movement. I think your movement's very impressive and just a growth out of, this is something that would be helpful for me. How can I serve the world? And I love finding those types of stories that originate that way. Just, hey, this is something that we could bless the life of somebody else if we were able to shift a perspective or change the way somebody views something or sees the world. Because most of it, I got to go to, I don't know if they do this in England. Have you ever been to like a parade of homes? Have you ever heard of such a thing?
What's that?
It's not all over America, but they do it in Utah primarily, and then a few other places. But basically, they have the newest wave, we'll say, of brand new construction. And these are like insane houses. Some of them are, one of the ones we walked through was 20,000 square feet.
Oh my God, that's a hotel.
Yeah, it really was. It has like multiple different wings. It's got sports courts. It's got everything. It's stupid. At the end of the day, it's just a stupid house, but it was really cool. And then some of the other ones, they had 50 beds, like 50 places for people to sleep in, 10,000 square feet, swimming pool in the backyard, slide, movie theater, basketball court in the basement, extra, just outrageous, amazing, beautiful, wonderful.
It makes me think of one word, cribs. MTV Cribs, do you remember?
Well, yeah, so it's kind of like that though, but everybody can go through. You buy a $25 ticket and you can go walk through. There's like 30 to 40 houses in a town that are all brand new construction. And really it's a way for the builders and the tradesmen to show off their expertise, show off what they could do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the marketing side of it. But what was fascinating, I decided to go with my oldest son. He's 7 years old, and we went and walked through these houses. And at first, he's like, oh man, I would be so happy if I had these things.
Yeah.
And very much what I'm excited about this conversation is it's really about perspective on life and like, what is the thing that changes your life? And it's not what you have. It's not maybe your ability to transport yourself. Obviously, it'd be better if you could transport yourself easily or more easily. But the perspective is what matters most. And so having that time with my 7, almost 8-year-old son, like, look, this house isn't going to make you any happier. Having a slide in your backyard, we have a swimming pool in our backyard. Just because it doesn't look like this swimming pool, we have a lot of this stuff. That's not going to make you happier. We can decide to be happier. We can be grateful and honored that we got to have this existence, but the thing isn't what's going to make us happy. And so it's the perspective of choosing happiness. And so for you, that's one of the things that had attracted me to your story is like the perspective shift that you're helping people accomplish. So talk about your movement, how you got started. Why was that the thing that you decided to latch onto and make a movement out of?
So, I mean, I kind of have two lives. I have a life before my life-changing event and I have a life after my life-changing event. So previous, I was mom. I got 2 gorgeous kids who are much older now. I trained to be a hairdresser. I didn't have huge plans, but I did kind of have an entrepreneurial streak in me, but I trained later in life to be a hairdresser, and I have plans. However, we know what life makes of plans, and they were all crushed. I contracted a catastrophic MRSA infection in my leg when I was having surgery in 2007, which consequently led me to having an amputation in 2010. It was a leg that had barely survived all the surgery.
Why did it take 3 years for them to decide amputation was the best option? Just because they couldn't fight the disease fast enough, or?
No, it was, they didn't decide.
They didn't decide? You decided? Okay.
Because I was very, very poorly, and they saved me and they saved my leg. But it was a leg it was that point where I became disabled, because the leg, I couldn't bend it. I couldn't walk on it. I was in a wheelchair, and it just controlled everything that I was doing in my life. But I wasn't at a point where I could actually accommodate the thought of having a leg amputated. It just wasn't there. And it took me 3 years to get there. And after 3 years of living with it and seeing what it was doing to my life, I just said, no, thank you. I would rather live without this leg and live with a prosthetic leg, which is going to allow me to make more progress, because all I was doing was just going downhill. It was always, ultimately it would have been amputated, but the important thing about what happened was the MRSA infection was something that happened to me, and me choosing the amputation was me taking back the power. Okay. And I took back the control. And for me, that was a really pivotal change of perspective, if you want to talk about how to look at things.
Yeah. So during that time period of 3 years, did you journal ever, or kind of really look at, like, why do I feel like I need my legs, or what do I feel like it would say about me if you didn't have a leg? Like, was that part of the conversation?
Yeah, in my head, I didn't want to become a woman with one leg. I wanted to become a woman with a prosthetic leg. And that was how I was viewing it. And that having a prosthetic leg would give me 2 legs again. And I was right, I have to say. And everybody that I spoke to during those 3 years, I did a lot of research, and I spoke to a lot of amputees. I had counselling. I spoke to rehab clinics. I spoke to physiotherapists. So I knew what was coming if I had that leg amputated. And everybody that I spoke to that had already gone through that decision, they all said one thing, and it was, you'll wish you'd done it sooner. So I came to the end of the journey with that leg. It wasn't a team player anymore. It was holding me back. And I could feel that my world became very small. I couldn't work, a lot of pain. Like I said, I was already disabled at the point of that leg becoming so damaged. So the actual decision, I mean, yeah, I probably underestimated it. The actual decision to say to the surgeon, right, it's time. And he actually said, I thought you'd have been back sooner. That was what he said, funnily enough, because he knew what I was like. I'm a forward-moving person. It actually didn't come that hard, because the decision had already really been made for me. I'd already lost that leg. Yeah, the surgery was easy. Apparently, it's one of the easiest operations you can do. I was in and out of hospital in 4 days. Yeah, stitched up. There it went. And then came the rehab side of it, which kind of had 2 arms to it. It was, I don't want to say 2 legs to it. It had 2 arms to it. One was the physical side. So it was the strength training. It was the physiotherapy. It was the actually getting up on a leg, which they do very, very quickly. It would surprise you how quickly they want you up and walking. But the other side of it was the kind of the mental side of it, which I underestimated. It was the body image change. It was the for me to adapt, to allow society to adapt to me, because I suddenly became a person that stood out. Do you know what I mean?
I only know from my perspective, but yeah, I've never been amputated.
People stare. People look, people point, people would say things that I found hard to kind of deal with, because I was still dealing with coming to terms with being this different body. I'll give you one example. It was not long after the amputation. I was sat in my wheelchair, and I was just in the town centre. Shops everywhere, and there's a shoe shop, and there's 2 quite drunk guys stood outside. It was probably horse racing day in New York, and there was 2 quite drunk guys. And on the shoe shop window, it said, buy one, get one free. So obviously one of them pointed at me and laughed. She only needs one anyway. Now, I laugh at that now. I make that joke now. You're laughing. Not a problem. But so early in, I felt like, I want the earth just to swallow me up. Because, I'm 15 years in now, and I think that story is quite, what were you thinking, Lindsay? But that kind of thing early on makes it difficult to kind of adapt. But, now I make that joke. I make one shoe jokes all the time. Did you know? This is an interesting story. There's a shoe shop called Shoe. I don't know whether you have it in the States, SCH. There are other shoe shops, but this shoe shop will now allow me to go in there and buy one shoe.
Just buy one. You don't need the other one.
Yeah, and that's not just me, that's worldwide. And I cried when I saw that, because I thought, oh my God, that is just such a move forward in this disability being accepted as the norm. I can go in and buy one shoe. I mean, that is just amazing.
So do you still use a shoe on the other no?
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I'm getting older now. I'm 57 now, so other bits of me are falling apart now. So I actually I don't walk any longer because I have problems with my back. I've had part of my back fused. I've got multiple stuff going on. It's boring, I won't tell you, but I don't walk anymore. So no, so I've got a cupboard full of left shoes.
Okay.
Until Shoe said I can buy one shoe from them, so I don't anymore. But I've still got all the leftover left foot shoes from before. But yeah,
that's fascinating. Where did they at what stage of the leg was it up by the hip, down by the knee? Like where did they amputate?
It's above knee. So I lost 2 joints. So I lost my knee joint and I lost my ankle joint, which makes it a bit more complicated to learn to walk again. You use a lot more energy when you are an above knee amputee. Just to actually ambulate and walk with a prosthetic, it takes a lot of energy, probably double the energy that you take. So it was actually just walking was really, really good exercise. And I loved it. And I was super active amputee, which led me into other walks of life, but also led me into sometimes needing a walking stick because for balance, just for going busy places where people don't always see that you've got a prosthetic, you know. And I sometimes used a walking stick and they were horrible. They just made me feel like, you're just ashamed to use them because they said nothing about me because I was still, I was 43. I was still quite young. And that was what led me into making my own because I couldn't find anything that I thought looked like me.
So I'm going to save that for a second because I want to ask a few more questions about the leg. And just like these are things that normally, like you mentioned, there's this, maybe there's a staring, maybe there's a pointing, maybe there's like what's going on because people don't talk. I don't want to even say people don't talk about it, but a lot of people feel awkward asking. Thank goodness I didn't get that gene for me. Yeah. But I think it's fascinating. I think it's cool that you get to have that experience. I'm not like eager to have that experience, but I imagine if I had the experience, it's like going bald. I don't love the fact that I'm going bald, but I'm going to have the experience of being a bald dude one day. And then I'm going to figure out.
And you'll embrace it.
I will.
That's exactly what you'll do.
But how do they, like with an above knee amputation, I guess this might be the same with a below knee amputation. How do you maintain like muscle growth and not have your quad and like your thigh atrophy? Yeah. But because there's that resistance that I feel like is part of your calf muscle and that movement, but maybe it has nothing to do. I'm not an exercise science person, so I'm just curious. How did you do that?
No, you're exactly right. So you've got to be very aware of keeping your thigh, your quads strong. However, I think you'd be surprised if you felt the weight of a prosthetic. Because they don't make them light. They don't make it, let's make it really light so this person can just feel like they're walking on feathers. It's nothing like that. They're really heavy. So it probably weighs about 7 kilos, my old leg, really heavy. So actually, when I say it takes more energy and it was like exercise, that's exactly what it was. But you do have to work on keeping your hip flexor. You've got to work on keeping that in the right position because otherwise you end up with a residual limb that kind of points forward if your hip flexor isn't strong enough to keep it backwards. You've got to do a lot of work on hip flexors and also your quad muscles, which is where the physiotherapy comes in. But the walking itself was actually really, really good exercise for the quads. You actually use a lot of your hip. There's a lot of hip swinging to ambulate with a prosthetic. There's a real technique to it. So there's hip swinging and moving it forward, but then you also use your glute muscles when you put weight down on the leg to push yourself forward, to push the other leg forward. It's complicated. So that's where you can understand why it takes a lot more energy.
Sure. So you've had it for a number of years now, prosthetic leg, and then maybe you wear it sometimes, maybe you don't at this point because you're sitting down most of the time. Yeah. But with the prosthetic advance in technology, where do you see that headed? Do you feel like it advanced a lot during your time of using a prosthetic leg? And what was that like beginning versus where it is now?
Yeah, hugely. Really, I don't know whether you know much about our NHS system, apart from it's crashing to the ground at the moment.
A little bit. I spent 2 years in Scotland and Ireland as an LDS missionary, and I liked it there. But the healthcare system, I know a lot of people give America a lot of grief because we have to pay a lot more for it. But I'm like, yeah, well, we get it. That's important. We get it.
Yeah,
we have to pay for it. But we
pay
get
nothing. We get nothing. That's essentially. I've lived in Europe before, and we had a semi-private system where part of it was state and part of it was privately funded. Really good system, and you kind of got what you paid for in tiers. But the NHS, I mean, we are in tears because it is literally just crashing to the ground.
Yeah.
So really, they provide you with what they think you need. So as a 43-year-old active person, they provided me actually with some really quite good limbs, because good knees, the knee's the most important part of it, because if they think you're going to get the most out of it, then they'll provide you with it. And they do cost a lot of money. For example, a microchipped German prosthetic knee will set you back 30,000.
When you say microchip, like electronics, so it's moving based off of...
Yeah, it learns how you walk and it helps you walk. It knows when you're walking on uneven ground. You charge it up every night, so it's like a little computer. Really high tech. But they were there just coming in when I started my journey with prosthetics. I eventually did get one once I proved that I was super active. As that time, you'll remember more blades coming in where you would see runners using blades. Nowadays, you get a lot more people just walking around with blades on. They were a little bit more...
When you say blades, do you mean like the rounded ones that are...
Yeah. So it doesn't look anything like a leg. It doesn't even have a foot. You know, it's just... By the way, you do have to choose a foot to go on the end of your prosthetic. And hopefully they make it the same size as the one you've got.
I mean, most feet aren't the same size anyways. Most feet are like half an inch different or half a size different.
Yeah, but you choose the size you want, you know, but the blades were coming in. Now, I've never been a runner. I didn't run before. I used to run for a bus occasionally, but that was about it. So I never really pushed to get a blade. They never offered me a blade, but the technology coming into all the prosthetic equipment was quite speedy at that time, because we were getting a lot of veterans coming out of war zones with residual limbs, and I think they made big advances for us. I think because they were catering for veterans, I think we actually got the benefit of that. So I never actually got a blade to walk or run with, but the technology, and this really interests me because I sometimes go into schools and do talks to children. So when I go in, there I am. I'll have my legs. I've got a couple of legs. I used to have a leg for riding a bike. You know, they made me a separate one for riding a bike and things. And I would go in and I would take my legs with me. All the kids want to know, number one, does it hurt? No, doesn't hurt. It did. Doesn't hurt now. Okay, can we feel your legs? And all they wanted to do was pass the legs round and feel and look and bend them, and because these are the engineers of tomorrow. These are the guys, the kids that are, and we're talking primary school, so up to 11 years of age. These are the people that are going to be providing the technology. And I loved it that they were so fascinated by the legs, and they were just passing them around and just fiddling. What does this do? What does that do? How do you walk? Just the same kind of thing that you were asking.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's so cool. So let's transition this conversation a little bit into the broader aspect of your movement, because one of the things, again, that everybody gets a different path in life. Everybody gets a different path. And some of the paths you're forced into acceptance or you're forced into change. Whether you choose to accept it is up to you. And then other people, the thing that they need to accept isn't as noticeable. It isn't as forcing, right? So like you accepting that your leg is going to be gone, that's something that's going to happen sooner or later. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. Other people have different parts of themselves that they haven't figured out how to accept. Maybe they don't like their laugh. Maybe they don't like the way their hair is, or maybe they don't like the thoughts that they have when they see somebody and they're judgmental, or there's all these different things that we kind of self-shame ourselves about. That's really, in my opinion, undue self-shame, and nobody else in the world is shaming you about it. But because you think somebody else is, then you shame yourself. So your journey kind of forced some of that liberation of like, you know what, I actually can't worry about what other people think because it doesn't matter and I am what I am. Talk about your self-acceptance journey through that process.
I think one of the big mistakes I made in the beginning, and what you just said there, I can't be bothered what other people think. I shouldn't be bothered about it. The key there is I didn't know what they were thinking. When I felt shame, when I felt that people were staring at me, the key thing was I'm not a mind reader. But I gave myself the position of being a mind reader. So do you know what I used to imagine people were thinking about me? I used to think, I bet they're thinking, thank God they're not me. And that's just not true because I didn't know that.
I want to ask a question here because this is if I was to speak in front of 100,000 people, this is the topic I would talk about. This is why I'm so excited to have this conversation, because you're living a different lived experience that forces you to come to the table with this conversation than I live. But I believe that this conversation is absolutely true in everybody's life. And the sooner we can at least become aware of the conversation, then we can start making adjustments. We usually think and feel the shame of that they're probably thinking this. But the reality is we think that about what we see. So we're shaming ourselves, but it's too painful to accept that we think that about the person we see with an amputee. You may even be an amputee and you see somebody else with an amputee and be like, oh, I'd hate to be that person. Because you forget that you are that person. You are the person that doesn't have a leg. So you're judging or shaming or I would feel that would be so much shameful if I had that. Because you forget for a second that you're that person. Because you still in your mind don't necessarily identify as maybe an amputee or an addict or whatever it is. Yeah. You don't identify that way. So then you're shaming other people while you're still participating in the same thing. That's the crux of shame is we're projecting what we think other people would shame us for, but really it's the shame that we attach to other people. And without that realization, it's really difficult to overcome shame.
Yeah. And I think you're exactly right. So that story that I told you about the two drunk men in the one shoe, that was so early on in my journey, I hadn't accepted it. And that's probably why you're exactly right. I was thinking, if I looked at someone like me, I would think, thank God I'm not them. Do you think? Do you agree with that? That's because I hadn't accepted it at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the part that I want more of your exponentiation on. I want you to just keep talking about what was that process of acceptance? What were the major hurdles, the major experiences where it's you know what, I'm aware. What was the time that you became aware that you hadn't accepted it? Because there's a point where you're embarrassed and feel maybe put down upon. But once you become aware that you feel that way, you stop feeling that way, in my experience at least, because you're now aware that you are doing it to yourself. But what was the experience that led to you becoming aware that you hadn't accepted it yet?
I think that was a big eye-opener to me because that made me feel so bad. I think I had experiences going into restaurants where I felt that everybody was staring at me and literally just breaking down at the table. This was early on. It was, we're talking 2 months, 3 months in, and I was still kind of running on adrenaline because, and I was forcing myself. I was forcing myself to try and make progress every day because this was what I'd bought into. That leg goes, you get the chance to make progress. So I was suddenly beating myself, again to say, you should be getting better every day. And of course, I really wasn't. I used to be scared of that I would fall over if I was out on my own, to the point where I stopped going out because I was scared I was going to fall over. I did actually fall over. There's a story. I fell off a toilet. And I hurt myself, and that made me frightened that I was going to hurt myself again. So all this bunch of things happened. But the main thing that got me through that, the main thing that got me over that, was when I reached out to try and find work, because I was a mum. I was a single mum, and I had to work. So, and I couldn't hairdress. I wouldn't trust me with scissors near me, knowing that I'd fallen off a toilet. That's not, no. So I joined an agency at the time, it was called Amputees in Action. And they found work for amputees. So I joined, not really knowing what the kind of work was going to be. But anyway, I became a trauma casualty actor, which effectively meant that I went and worked with blue light services, the army, our SAS, private security services, lots of different people. And I would go along and they would make me look like I'd just had my leg blown off, which it was a different prosthetic. It was like a pull-on prosthetic on a neoprene skin. And it was gruesome. It was horrible. And I would sit there wherever they put me with a little glove full of fake blood with holes in. And then when the exercise would start and whoever was coming near me, I would scream and I would squirt them with blood. And they would have to rescue me. I mean, it was such an eye-opener. I've squirted so much blood in so many faces. I've made people vomit. I've made people cry. I've made people... It was such good fun. It really was. I died a lot. I died so many places. If you want a laugh, go on one of my blogs and read about it. But I've died a lot. That put me in touch with other amputees. And I thought, hang on. And these were other leg amputees, arm amputees, all sorts, double amputees, quad amputees, people who, I was looking at them and thinking I was learning off them a lot. The same agency emailed me one day and said, would I be interested in doing some work for the Olympic Committee, which was in 2012. So it was London 2012. Yeah. We had the Olympics. And I ended up training to be a circus performer, to perform in the closing ceremonies, the opening and closing of the Paralympics, as a circus performer, flying around in the air on a trapeze, doing all sorts of crazy things. But the key to that was there was 40 of us. They chose 40 different disabilities across the board, lots of disabilities. But I found my people, and that transformed my world, because I found people like me who were navigating their lives, who'd been amputees for 40 years, who were navigating life as paraplegics with cerebral palsy, being blind, being deaf, and it just blew my mind. And I found my people, and I got all the learning that I needed from them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think that so often in life, again, these are just like axioms that I live my life by, and also when I'm coaching and mentoring other businesses, it's true. It's a thing that we think we should keep secret and private, that we're most embarrassed about. Okay, that actually is our superpower. So I work in finance, financial education, and I think of it this way. If you're looking at a balance sheet, if you have a house, a mortgage, that house / mortgage shows up on both sides of your balance sheet. Your positive side, your asset side, and also your liability side if you owe a mortgage on it, right? And every asset has an asset side and a liability side. But if you never allow it to go onto the asset side and allow interest to be applied to the liability, then it's debt. It's actually debt. And debt is more of a statement of emotion, of feeling of not worthiness to honor the asset. It has nothing to do with whether money's owed or not. It's whether you believe that you have the ability and worthiness to make good on what you've borrowed. And so this biggest liability in your life, the thing you're ashamed about, the thing that you're hiding in your house about, I can't go out to work and nobody's going to hire me, it's not going to work. As soon as you allow interest, vision, other people to see and recognize and be part of that quote unquote liability, it becomes your greatest asset. So many people, they're hiding in shame, whether you're addicted to pornography or you're addicted to whatever, and you're hiding it. If you're hiding it, it's still a liability. All it takes for that to become the biggest asset in your life is allow others to be interested in the liability. That's it. Allow others to apply interest to the liability. And that turns any liability into a positive asset. And that's what you did. You leaned, I'm so shameful. Okay, I'm going to try it. And then you went into the full opposite side of, to the point where it's almost making fun of it, because you're now literally an actor and your life is never as bad as what they show on TVs. Not actually spurting people with blood. Well, maybe, but only in the movie side of it, or the filming side, the acting side.
That is an absolutely genius way to look at it. And I've never, ever considered looking at it as something that I could put down on paper, but you just did. And I've never looked at it like that before, but you are absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad.
I'm going to keep that up there.
Good. Share it. Tell everybody. I just think it's beautiful. When I saw your story, I'm like, I love that she's owning this, because there's another aspect of this whole story. I mean, we've been talking about the emotional side, and that's important. We'll get back into that. But I want to transition into one of the things that kind of led you to create these canes or walking sticks or whatever we want to call them that express your personality. So many times in our life, we feel like we were literally driving around on our way down from Utah just recently. And my son was like, Mom, why are all the cars white, gray, or black? Like, why are there not colored cars? Right. And it's because in society, and we don't have to get into the conspiracy theory side of it, but there's a graying of society. If everybody is just meh, then nobody's special. Nobody stands out. And that forces people to conform subconsciously. Mm-hmm. Conformity is what governments and religions and institutions want, because it's easier to control conformed people than people who think outside the box. And so it kind of gets uncomfortable to have freedom of expression, not necessarily verbally, although that's definitely an important thing in the world right now. It's maybe under attack, but just visually. Are you allowed to wear flamboyant things? Are you allowed to do your hair crazy? Are you allowed to wear bright colors? We're both wearing purple today. Because I like purple.
We're very matchy-matchy.
Yeah, matchy-matchy. I knew you were going to wear purple today.
I knew you were.
But talk about, like, as you're going through, you're realizing, okay, maybe we need some of these other resources. I need them in my life, but I'm just bored of everything out there. Talk about the creation process in your mind, first the decision to do it, and then what that looked like coming into fruition.
So the first instance, I knew I needed a walking stick. Not all the time, but I knew that I needed one sometimes. So looking around, dull, bored, that they were horrible. So, but I was still, I didn't want to stand out. I didn't want to stand out for being old-fashioned and frumpy and boring. But at the same time, I didn't want to stand out. It's hard to explain. The first walking stick I made, this might explain it to you, was a clear acrylic walking stick. I knew that I wanted to make an invisible walking stick. That was what my aim was, an invisible walking, because I can't be ashamed of that. It's invisible. So I sourced some acrylic rods and I made it in my kitchen and in my oven. And I made this clear acrylic stick because it was invisible. And I think I still wanted to be invisible. I didn't want to be noticeable. I would rather just sort of blend away. So made this stick. Off I went, walking round. People started saying, "Oh my God, I love your walking stick. Where did you get that?" And of course, my confidence down here suddenly started to go up a little bit. And I'm thinking, people like what I've done. So I made a coloured walking stick, bright red one. Go the other way, bright red. And the same thing kept happening. And my confidence just exploded. I just felt great. And I thought, oh my God, this is actually something that I could give to other people who were walking around with those horrible bored walking sticks. And I had this moment, and I can still remember it. And it was this is my why. This is my thing now. This is it. This is what I'm going to commit myself to. And I did. And I started the business. And they started to organically grow. I didn't have a clue about marketing. Instagram barely existed. I didn't have a clue. So any growth that I was getting was purely organic. And that meant people were asking each other about them. And they were sharing, "Oh yeah, I got it from Neo Walk. Oh yeah." And then someone would ask them. For example, one of my customers went to, "Lindsay, I'm going on holiday. Need a cool stick. Going to Tasmania." Great, off you go. And then 3 weeks later, we start getting orders from Tasmania. And now, it's the growth can be so organic, but that's just because people are talking to each other and asking, where did you get it? And that's how that happened. My why ping light bulb moment just said, this has done so much for my confidence. That is something that other people, I'm just average. I'm just Joe average. I was average age, average everything. And I thought if it's helped me, it'll help other people.
So do you think at that point you realize, I'm just trying to walk through this in my mind because I've coached a lot of people, and when the penny drops, that's why I do coaching, because I love watching the penny drop in somebody's life. And generally, it's hell trying to get there. Getting to get the penny drop is just like so much pain, anguish, anxiety. Nobody enjoys it. The coach doesn't enjoy it. The mentor doesn't enjoy it. The mentee, or nobody enjoys it. And it's just push. And until the penny drops. And then it's like, everything's perfect. I'm so grateful for this. And it drops. So then you get that realization. But not everybody else gets that realization. So now there's somebody who's still just got amputized or whatever 2 months ago. They may not want the brightest color walking stick right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe in 5 years they might, but how do you help somebody shorten that time frame and realize what it would do for their confidence if they were willing to adopt it sooner?
There's one word, and it's community. We have a large community of not all customers, but the people that have joined our community who are maybe exactly where you said they're not in that position yet up here where they think they want something that stands out, but our community, they talk to each other, they encourage each other, they support each other, they post a lot of pictures of themselves saying, look at me. No, actually, look at me. That's one of our taglines, is made to stand out, not to fit in. We want people to have the confidence to stand out. So we do get people who come to us who say, I just want, I want the clear one. I want the clear, it's got bubbles in, but I'll have it. It's a bit fancy. And then, they start on their journey where people will go up to them and they say, oh my God, I love your walking stick. Where did that come from? And we can guarantee it will happen to you. It's almost like a guarantee. It's like a money back guarantee. If nobody asks you where you got your stick, we'll give you your money back. And we should
I like it.
Never thought of that.
That's a good one.
But people some start off quiet, some already know that they've got this personality. We've made some incredible walking sticks, but for people that actually are there and they say, no, this is me. It's bright, it's colourful. We make them that light up. They have lights in. So when you go out at night, you've got this lit up walking stick. People can see you. You can see where you're going. It's got a safety aspect as well. But we've made some wild sticks. Personally decorated sticks, hand painted ones, completely covered in rhinestones. We've made, this is a nice story. We've made a few of these where customers have asked for ashes to be included in their stick. There was a young lady recently who was getting married and she'd lost her father. So we put some of her father's ashes in the handle. We drilled out a channel in the handle. So his ashes were in there so she could hold him while she was walking down the aisle. I mean, sometimes I cry when I tell that.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It still sends shivers down me now. But what an honour to be trusted to do that, with the most precious person in her life was her dad. And she sent some of him to us. It's such an honour to be trusted to do that. But we've made so many sticks. But the point is, it reflects what you've got going on in here. Whether you're, God, I don't even want to say whatever your walk of life is, whether you're a punk, whether you're a goth, whether you like bright colours, whether it reflects your religion. We've done some, ones that reflect someone's religion. We've done some that reflect gender. We've got pride sticks. We've got just every aspect of every walk of life you could imagine. We've made them. And I love the fact that people are out there and they're actually, look, this is me. This is a bit of me. I collect these. Hang on, I'll lean over. I collect glasses. Oh, hello. Didn't have them on.
I'm
before.
here.
I collect these glasses. I've got about 50 pairs of glasses. I used to love shoes. Shoes don't interest me anymore. I only wear half of them. I collect them, and when I put some of my really, really funky ones on, it's saying a bit about me. And they are still a medical aid. They're for people who can't see, when your eyes are partially disabled. But people don't see those as a medical aid. So I would quite like to take walking sticks on the same journey that spectacles and glasses have been on in the last probably 30 years. I think glasses have become a lot more popular. I want to take mobility aids on that same journey so people actually wear them to say, yeah, look at me. This is a bit of me. This.
Yeah, like I have glasses. I don't need glasses. So I just have they're not prescription or anything. They're just glasses. Yeah. They're an accessory to my life and to my personality. I love, and I I like bright colors. So I'm going to share a funny story that at one point curtailed my situation. And this is not to be negative towards anybody, so don't take it any which way. There's no prejudice either way, but it is something that like I didn't identify with. And because somebody else was viewing me a certain way, I chose to act differently for a time in my life. So I've always been I like bright colors. Like bright colors are my thing all the time. And when I was younger, bright colors and lots of different colors didn't mean anything. You were alive in like the late 80s, early 90s. Bright colors didn't have a meaning. It just meant the guy liked bright colors, right? Yeah. Now that bright colors and rainbows and everything has been kind of co-opted by a different section of our population who have like different genders, whatever, right? That's okay. But it didn't mean that when I decided I liked it. But as I was growing up, again, I'm the seventh of 11 kids, and I would go Costco. They had these pairs of socks that were really comfortable, and they were bright colors. And so I would get them, and I would mix the sock colors just because I like the more colors I can get on my body, the happier I am. I love bright colors. I like being standing out. Like my company colors is bright green, and people are like, why bright green? And like, because it'd be neon green or neon orange if I could make it that. Like, I just love to be seen. I love walking in and having somebody have an aneurysm to work. That's too bright for me. I love it. Okay. So yeah. That is me. That's my personality. Like 5 different colors. My wife's like, that doesn't really match. I'm like, I'm not going for matching. How many more colors? So that's just my personality. Well, when I was about 17, I went home, and I've always really liked fashion as well. I knew I was going to marry a woman someday. So all of my friends were women. I didn't really have guy friends. And so all these things start adding up. And then finally somebody sat me down, somebody very close to me, and said, hey, like, are you gay? Like, it's okay. You can come out of the closet. We still love you. In fact, maybe we would be excited if you were gay. And I was like, what? Like, what on earth would give you the impression that I'm gay? Like, and I don't mind it if like my best friend is, I don't care. Like, but that also was like, exactly, your best friend is. I'm like, no, like, anyways. So that changed. One of the things that they said was like, well, you mismatch your socks, and it's kind of like only certain people. I was like, what? So anyways, I stopped mismatching my socks after that. And I dumbed down my apparel a lot to just more bland colors. And I was like, this is lame. So now I'm ramping back up the color. But I think it's interesting. And we've all been through these identity shifting things where somebody says something, somebody looks a certain way, and we allow it to impact our behavior just because maybe we don't know how to express who we really are, and we don't want to shake the boat. So these are the things that I wanted to draw out in this conversation. Like, how are you helping people through that? Because you've had that experience. I want to shift a little bit, because you mentioned you're a mother. How did your children deal with the fact that you were losing your leg?
They were of an age, one was 13 and one was 15. So they were teenagers, but they'd seen me go through a lot. They'd seen me be ill. They'd seen me have multiple surgeries to save the leg. So I think they were very accepting of it. They couldn't see another solution. And I was very open with them, and I talked to them about it and how it made me feel. And so they were very accepting of it. And because they now have a disabled mother, I've got 2 wonderful, empathetic, sympathetic and loving and helpful kids. And it's made them, I think, into better human beings, because they've had to live with a side of life. A lot of people don't get to live with a disabled parent, but they've grown into amazing people. And, you know, it's a tough way to learn, but I think they've come out of it better than had I not.
Yeah, I love the phrase, a lot of people don't get that opportunity. And just because they don't get that opportunity doesn't mean anybody wants the opportunity.
No.
You know, I was grateful for the way I was raised. I think it was a little bit harder and rougher than I would have wanted for my childhood.
Did you say you're one of 11 children?
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like chaos.
It was, you know, and we were homeschooled, and there was a lot of stress and a lot of stuff. And my parents, they had a very specific objective before they even had any kids. I'm the 7th, but before they had any children, they had decided that they wanted to create a family and individuals, lead their children to be, by the age of 14, able to provide for themselves, have a skill or something that in society, if they were to die, their kid would be fine by the age of 14. Like,
Wow.
fully functioning adult, essentially. And frankly, I just don't know any way you can create that without a rough child. Like, you got to be hard on them. You're going to demand excellence. You're going to push a little bit harder. And so in one respect, I'm great. Like, not one respect, like 99%. I'm really grateful for everything in my childhood. Would I wish it on probably my worst enemy? Probably not. Like, there was stuff that...
Would you do it yourself? Is this how you live with your children? Is this?
I'm pretty hard on my kids. I don't think I have the same objective of So what was interesting about my childhood, and this comes back to like having grace with the guys who are making fun. I say making fun, making a joke, maybe at your expense, but I'm sure they didn't mean ill intent by it, right?
No.
My mom and dad, there's no instruction manual for parenting. Anybody who's had kids knows that. And so they did their best. They read, they researched, and they did their best. They were still flawed human beings that sometimes didn't have perfect control of their emotions, didn't always act intentionally, and still flew off the handle and still had emotional reactions to things that would have been nice if they were in control of. But once you are on the other side, now I'm a parent, I've got 3 kids, and I'm like, wow, they did so good. They were determined, they were consistent, even though they had their flaws, and sometimes you didn't know if they were upset at themselves or upset at you, but either way, you were the one who was receiving the stick. Then like, that wasn't the best. And there's that aspect that I think, okay, in my parenting, do I spank my children? Yes, I do. But I only use my hand. I don't use shoes. I don't use sticks. I don't use switches. I don't use tablespoons or whatever. Like, I use my hand. And guess what? It hurts me when I spank my kids. Like, my hand actually hurts. And you're like, well, you shouldn't hit them that hard. Well, my hand actually hurts. But at least I know that it's painful for both of us. That's better. I still believe this. It's better than them getting hit by a car. So if they understand, hey, you don't go in the road because there's pain associated with going in the road. I'd rather it be the pain of my hand, and I'm also experiencing the pain, and we're learning together rather than just don't do that. You know, it's like gentle parenting. The life is not gentle. The world's not gentle.
Yeah.
So that's I don't see that as a solution, but I do think that when I first had kids, I swung maybe the wrong way. My mom was always hysterical about everything. So I was like, no, I don't like that. So then I went into, I'm still going to discipline my kids, but I'm not going to do it emotionally at all. And then the COVID really shifted this probably the most for me. When everybody's wearing masks, you lose so much of the human experience because you don't understand. You lose the ability to connect with somebody when you only see their eyes. So as I was watching that research happen and watching these people who were losing that ability, I was like, wow, maybe my kids experiencing me disciplining them with a lack of emotion is just as harmful as all crazy emotion. And so then I was like, they need to know when I'm happy with them. They need to know when I'm upset with them, and they need to know when I'm indifferent, right? They need to at least know those 3 different emotions and what that looks like on somebody's face and things. After that, I would go in and discipline my kids, and I would be performative and maybe yell and get excited. And then I would come out and I'd be like, hey babe, how did I do? You know, like talking to my wife, like, because I'm performing. It's different than me actually being out of control.
Yes.
Off my mind. I'm in control of the situation, and I'm controlling the performance to the level of the infraction, rather than everything is level 9 and it's just off the rails because I tied my shoe wrong or because, I stabbed my sibling with a butter knife.
No, I get that. Your parents, were they a really good team? Did they work well as a team, did you consider?
I wouldn't say so. My mom was pretty much like, if we were to label abuse, which I think that this current standard of abuse now is just good parenting. That's, I think we've gone too far pendulum swing in society, but my mom was more of the active parent, we'll say, the one who was kind of crazy, but also making sure things got done. My dad was the opposite, almost to the point of neglectful, where like he would be sitting there just like, I'm not doing anything, while my mom is in the same room beating a child. And you're like, well, maybe somebody should have stepped in and said, hey, you need to go cool off. Come back when you're ready to like be civilized, So I think there's a level of both that is required.
Yeah.
I like in my house, would I parent the children the exact same way that my wife does? No, not necessarily. And oftentimes I find myself like maybe clenching my jaw or biting my tongue, like, oh man, I don't necessarily love it. But also I have to understand when is too far and go step in when I need to. And at the same token, I'm in charge of making the money in our house because that's what we've decided. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's what we've decided. And she's in charge of taking care of the kids 90% of the day. And I can't go undermine her whenever she's trying to establish control, you know? So like, I think that there has to be a balance, even if it's not like how you would do it. You have to allow somebody to do it the best way they know how, within reason, and making sure that everybody's still safe in the process.
It's like you say, but there's no handbook. The kids just they don't come with a handbook. And I wonder back to the conversations that your parents must have had when they decided that they were going to approach parenthood like this. You kind of would imagine that there was a conversation where your dad must have said, I'll take part and I'll support and I'll do this and I'll do that. And I just wonder if maybe he didn't deliver on his end of the deal.
Well, it could have been. Like, I can count on like 3 fingers the number of times that I was disciplined by my dad.
Right.
And it's kind of funny because like I don't know how this turned into this conversation, but I'm grateful it did.
No, it's interesting.
There was growing up, I would have so much rather been just beat and got on my way by my mom than like, hey, you have to go sit in the office with your dad. Or as long as you sit until you understand what you did wrong, you're going to sit there. And it's like, oh gosh, like this is prison. Just beat me, please. Let me go.
Let me go.
Yeah, like, so I think that but this actually ties very well back into our whole conversation. Physical punishment, physical judgment, physical interactions are often very much easier to get past than emotional trauma and emotional thought processes and emotional shame, emotional guilt. Because there's something about like the physical nature of it that our souls inherently know that we were meant to be autonomous and that nobody else should physically control us. But emotionally, it's not so easy to define influence versus manipulation. It's not so easy to define control versus inspiration, or like trying to help somebody, education, discipline. And so the mind is kind of its own little toolbox that's hard to manage sometimes, I feel like, at least.
No, it is very, very much. I mean, the mind is so powerful. Your brain is so powerful enough to still tell me that my leg is still there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of amputees, I just heard stories. I don't know anybody, but like we in America, probably everywhere, we have like these our cell phone, they call it ghost rings, right? You think somebody texted you, think your leg vibrated because you're so used to that being a thing, and like, no, nothing happened. Yeah. You're not that popular. You didn't get a vibration. Or not today, sorry, buddy. But that's just like, everybody could relate to that experience, like a ghost ring or a ghost vibration for your phone. But for you, it's probably a bigger deal. Talk about that experience of like phantom legs or phantom arms, or like this phantom experience. Like, it's not there, but it's still part of you to a degree.
Yeah. I'm looking at it now. I can feel it. It's as clear as day. It's different to what it used to be. Initially, it very much felt like it was just there, not like it hadn't gone. So much so, I used to say to people, don't trip over that, because I was so used to it sticking out and tripping people over. But when it was gone, I used to say to people, just don't trip it. And of course, it's not there, but it feels like it's there. And then it started to get shorter. So my foot is probably, my phantom foot is probably halfway up my phantom leg now, my calf. So I've got a short...
When you say did the whole leg get shorter, or did it just like move up to where you think your foot is about where your calf would be?
The foot is just sort of climbing up the calf to a point where eventually, it might just not go, it might go completely. I do take medication because some of the phantom, I don't want to call them pains because they weren't pains, phantom feelings that it used to give me were quite intense. So it sometimes used to feel like it was burning, or it would feel like it was twisted. Sometimes it would feel like my leg was twisted behind my back. It was really odd. So I take medication to get rid of those phantom feelings. Is that
very common in the community?
Very, very. Yeah, a lot of people experience these phantom feelings. It's not pain, because if I say, it's phantom pain, you would imagine it was the pain that I had before they amputated the leg, and it's nothing like it. It's a completely different feeling altogether.
Is it nerve related, or is it not? It's all psychological. It's not nerve related.
It is nerve. It's nerves, and it's it's a memory. It's just pain memory. It's muscle memory. It's nerve memory. It's every, not that I had my leg twisted. Well, maybe in yoga I twisted my leg behind my back. Not, to the extent where it was painful. But it can still feel cold. My phantom foot still gets cold. It can still get itchy. It can
So how do you, other than medication, how do you resolve those experiences?
Time. It's acceptance. It's just the way it is. It is what it is.
So do you when it's happening, do you still say, my phantom foot is cold? Do you speak it and call it out and acknowledge it? Or do you just try and be like, that's a crazy thought because clearly it's crazy because I don't have legs, so move on?
It makes me laugh usually because I'm looking at it and I say, give me a chance. I can't even itch it. I acknowledge it. I let it in. I think with a lot of things, especially pain you're going through, then that can be psychological pain as well. You've got to let it in to be able to deal with it, whether that's accepting it or arguing with it, but you've got to let it in. And I think it's the same with, seeing an invisible leg being itchy. I've just got to say, yeah, okay, it's attention seeking. I laugh at it. I talk to it. It's just an attention seeking thing. And eventually it goes, but time is, and that, one of the things when you say what helps you, this is one of my dogs, what helps you with acceptance, and it's quite often it's the one thing that nobody can give you, and it's time. And I see people now, because I coach people who are going through amputations and who've been through amputations and are struggling. I coach some people, and I wish I could give them it, but it's just a path that you've got to go through. You've just got to walk it yourself.
Yeah, it's a fascinating. I want to just keep drawing the parallel to validate what you're saying to those who have never experienced amputation, like myself. The principles, one of the reasons I love doing this podcast and the Fuel Your Legacy show to begin with, is there's so many principles in life that are true across the board. And these same feelings and emotions, sometimes maybe somebody's having, but they think, I shouldn't speak it. I shouldn't talk about that I feel depressed today. I shouldn't talk about, and there's a difference between talking about it, dwelling in it, and self-loathing yourself for it, and recognizing and acknowledging that's the state of how I feel today, and not shaming that state, right?
Yeah.
And I'll go for it.
I was just going to say, with the sort of mental health crisis that we now find ourselves in, I think because people are being more encouraged to speak out and being more encouraged to, what is counselling and therapy if it's not talking through your problems? And I've had an amount of that. I've been through a lot in the last couple of years with a divorce, and it's been ugly. But I think a lot of it is just getting people to allow it in and to find their way through it, whether that's by community, whether that's by reading, finding your own way to actually coach yourself through it, or by reaching out and encouraging people to reach out now. With people are so disconnected. And I think this is one of the reasons that we want to foster our community so much. And especially being disabled, you can become very disconnected and very lonely very quickly, because if you're unable to work, if you're unable to travel, if you don't see people tend not to come and visit you. If you're sick, if you've got chronic illness, you can be pushed down the list of people to visit. And I think that the loneliness crisis that we've got going on, we are being encouraged to speak out more about it. I've spoken out a lot. I think it depends how you perceive disability, whether you perceive it as a weakness, whether you perceive it as a superpower, whether you perceive it as, I think with me, there's a lot of vulnerability because, when you get down to things and your body has changed a lot, and, there's still a lot of acceptance going on years later.
Well, and that kind of leads to, it's so cool that you're now turning back and helping other people through this, because you were a fully able-bodied, and I'm putting that in big air quotes, because I understand there's physical disabilities and there's mental disabilities, and that there's a whole classification of just disabilities. I think there's a lot of people that, for lack of a better word, either take pride in or disregard the need to develop themselves because they aren't in the category of disabled. But if reality were to talk about trauma, we probably all are disabled in our own little way.
Yeah,
and we all need to be helpful and respectful of each other's. There's a book, the How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And he says somewhere in there that's like, you should just treat everybody as if they're going through something major in their life, because 99% of the time you're going to be right. Like, it's fine. Just treat everybody like they're struggling with something. But that aspect, you're a quote unquote able-bodied person, then you have this massive change in your body, and you already have your own self-doubt of accepting yourself. So when you get the opportunity to have another person accept you, despite your flaws, and I say your flaws from their perspective or from the outward or your inner perspective, your differences, and somebody does accept you, it's hard. Like, it'd be hard to say, I value myself more than being accepted by you. And that's a hard, because it's like, well, if I say no to this, maybe there's all these things I don't like, but is there another person who's going to accept me as I am? At least he accepts me for this much of who I am.
But when you say about people can be going through anything you don't know just by looking at somebody, that's the definition of an invisible illness. And even in my community, in the chronic illness community, a lot of people live with invisible illness, and that can be mental health. It can be something like, have you heard of POTS? Have you heard of?
I've heard of POTS. I don't know what it is necessarily, but I've heard it.
A heart dysregulation, which leaves you feeling very unstable and very dizzy sometimes. And people use our sticks for balance. Again, very invisible illness. When you go into a disabled bathroom nowadays, you'll see a notice on the front saying, "Not every illness is visible." Do you have those in the States?
Yeah, I've seen those signs before.
Yeah, we have those here. And I think that's just kind of a gentle reminder to people that you don't know what people are going through, whether that's a mental health issue or whether it's a physical thing. And I think that's just a gentle reminder to people to say, be kind. What do they say? If you can be anything, be kind.
Yeah,
and I think we've lost a lot of that in society, but we've lost a lot of self-expression as well. I know you touched on it just before about how people feel that they can't express themselves. We've become very grey. We've become very beige. We want to encourage people to express themselves.
Yeah, I think it is like sometimes it can be difficult because you never know if somebody's ready to talk about things. Mm-hmm. And so if you're somebody who okay, we don't talk about it enough in our society, how about we start talking about it? And some people feel very attacked that it's being talked about. Mm. Even though you didn't use their name, you didn't call them, hey, you have this illness. Mm. But some people feel very attacked. I have a belief, right? And this is, my mom and my grandma did not like when I posted this on social media. We had a full-on argument on Facebook about this. But I said something that I honestly believe based on my I studied neuropsychology. So from a neuropsychological perspective, I believe this is true. Mm. I believe that poverty is a mental illness. Your brain is not functioning in a way that promotes your happiness. It's not functioning in a way that promotes success. It's not working in a way that is even helping you accomplish what you say you want. It's stopping you. And it's through neurolinguistic programming, actual physical brain channels that were established to protect you, which is fine, but it's a mental illness. To be in a poverty, that doesn't mean to not have money, but to be in a poverty state of either being overly attached to wealth or to your hoarding, or just not respecting value to where you are acquiring it at all. And so there's this mental illness that for me, I feel like to one degree or another, I suffer from. As in, I have limiting beliefs about what I can do and my potential in this world, because I believe that value is placed on me rather than I create my value. That's that belief system, that thought process is not a healthy thought process. It's a self-demeaning thought process. And they're like, that invalidates other people's illnesses or invalidates other people's disabilities. I'm like, well, it limits it leaves you with lack of ability if you don't know how money works or if you don't have a wealthy mindset. And so I'm curious your perspective on where that line is. Like, if we're going to all talk about the things that we feel like we suffer from, But some people feel like, hey, now you're co-opting my thing. Just like I like rainbow clothes. I have a bright green bedspread with a rainbow zebra on it. This is my bed, okay? And you might come in like, are you okay? Or like, are you gay? I'm like, wait a second. I was never gay when I was 10 years old with this blanket. Why am I all of a sudden gay now? I'm not co-opting rainbows. They, like, if anybody co-opted it, they did, right? But it's like, I'm just being me. And am I still allowed to share what I believe is my mental illness and have that be just as respected as just because yours looks different than mine? So I'm curious, like, your perspective of how do you share that if the world doesn't really want us to talk about it? How do you still promote that conversation?
I just want to go back. I want to know what your grandma and your mum said when you shared that.
You could go on my Instagram, my Facebook, and find it, because I didn't delete it, because I'm like, I think it's great. Like, our family has always had a very open dialogue, and we, I don't know if you know who Patrick Henry is. He was one of the founders of our country, and one of the things he said is like, you can have like heated disagreements and still be agreeable. Like you can disagree and still be agreeable. So you should be able to have like a heated, quote unquote, argument or conversation without leaving disliking each other. So for my mom and I, like, we had a heated conversation about this where she felt very like, you are demeaning other people's real disabilities. You're demeaning or saying that, lumping yourself in, who's able-bodied, with all these people who actually have real mental illness and really suffer from depression and really suffer from anxiety and really, I'm like, wait a second. But poverty is the same way. People are suffering because they don't understand wealth. They're suffering in poverty because they don't even know the verbiage, the language to get out of it. And for generations, they've been suffering from this. And if we could heal poverty through shifting somebody's mind and having them believe they're worth something, that would be wonderful for our world. Yeah. If we could.
It's all knitted together, isn't it? It's all, I can see how it all comes as part of one package, one circle of thoughts, it is a belief system. But it's not a race. It's not, it's not, I don't go, ooh, I'll see your broken arm and raise you an amputated leg. It's not a race. I could win a few arguments like that, but one illness doesn't invalidate another. It's not, just because. No, I don't agree with that. It's not. We're not point scoring here.
Right.
I don't particularly agree with that. And I think, it goes back to the people with invisible illnesses. I mean, I feel like I'm always blessed that I've got a visible one, because people don't have to ask me what happened. They can see, she ain't got a leg. On they go, they don't have to. Whereas if someone's in the street and they're using a cane or a walker or, a wheelchair, and they look fine, people do feel that they have the right to come over to you and say, what's wrong with you? What happened to you? What's wrong with you? And I always feel glad that I've just got one leg and people don't have to ask me. But I don't agree with that. We aren't point scoring. It's not. Yeah. Not a race.
It was just interesting. So I was just curious your thought on that, because like everybody has a different level. And I know that there's some people who don't want to talk about it, and you don't know until you ask them, hey, like, what's your journey? And some people, I'm not ready to share my journey. Okay.
But is someone with a mental health issue less ill or more ill than I am then? By that rationale? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think that, everybody's got their, and then that's down to their perspective. Somebody may feel that they're dealing with their worst nightmare in the world inside their heads, but to me, I'm on a really peaceful pathway, really, because I'm happy, I'm acclimatized, I'm accustomed to it, I live with it. There's nothing I can't do. I just sometimes do things differently. So from my perspective, if they're living in a 90% trauma world, I'm probably in a 20%. But I may look worse than them. I don't know. It's down to perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Ton. There's a book, I don't know if you've ever read it, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
No.
Phenomenal book. He was a prisoner in the Nazi war camp, and I think it was Auschwitz or something. I don't know where he actually was, what camp he was in, but he he never chose to become a prisoner. As in, although he was there, he had to do everything else everybody else did, but like he never chose to be a prisoner inside of his head. That's kind of the topic of the book is how did he find meaning in life, even in literally the worst circumstances, short of death. He was experiencing it, yet he came out not with hatred, not with any of things towards those other people who were on the other side of the disagreement and doing what they felt was right. And like, anyways, it's a very fascinating book if you ever get a chance to read it.
Yeah. And again, it's perspective, isn't it?
So with your walking sticks, where, if somebody wanted to just see them, I went on your Instagram and maybe that's the best place to see them in action, but where else would somebody go to interact with this movement, join the community, whether they need it for their physical disabilities or whether they just want one? I think they looked cool to me. I was like, those things look like they could be just fun to have around the house.
Yeah.
Not with young boys. They would hit each other, but
there's a story lying there as well. No, I mean, we do have people who use them for cosplay, and like the goth community, they dress up, they often walk with canes. We embrace all that. The best place to see us is on Instagram, and you'll see sticks that have been photographed by the people that own them, with themselves looking amazing. That's a good spot. You can see them on our website. You can see them on our YouTube channel. We've got lots of videos out there. But out in the wild, that's what our customers call them. I love seeing a stick out in the wild. So when they see each other, they always go over and talk to each other. And when I see one out in the wild, I always go over and say,
Sure.
I love your walking stick. And they'll go, yeah, it's been made by a woman in England. And I go, yeah, that's me.
Yeah, that's me.
And I get really giddy because it still excites me to see people out there doing, living their purpose.
Do they get just as excited to see you and they realize they're talking to the person?
They do. I have
who changed their life. I love that. So her website. Oh, go for it. What were you going to say?
No, I never get asked for autographs though. But
no.
I am waiting and hoping one day.
One day. Your book. When you write your book, you'll get your autographs in the book.
I will.
Yeah,
and I already know what my book will be called.
But what's your book going to be called?
I haven't written it. I know what it's going to be called. It's going to be called It's Life After All.
It's Life After All. I love it.
Yeah, that's going to be my book. I haven't written it, but
probably just need to get it on paper. Sounds like you know a lot of those experiences, and it's just organizing the chapters.
Yeah.
And getting it out. So her website is www.neo-walk.com, and also on Instagram it's NeoWalkSticks. That's Instagram. At NeoWalkSticks, all one word there.
Yeah.
But I think everybody should go check them out. And then also, if you have a podcast or you just want to have another really insightful, fun, exciting conversation, reach out to Lindsay.
Yeah. I'm happy to chat. I mean, you've heard from us, you can end up in all sorts of conversation topics.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure we just scratched the surface. You've got at least 50 years of experience that you could share on all these different topics. I'm grateful for you taking time to share what you did share.
Thank you.
And go through some of those things that maybe are not the easiest to talk about, or you're still figuring out how to talk about them, how to process them, how to re-engage with the community after certain things happen. There's a lot there that I'm really excited for you to get to grow through, and excited to watch that. So thank you so much. Is there any final words or any final thoughts that you want to share with the Fuel Your Legacy audience?
Someone asked me the other day what would be the parting message that I would want to give to people who are going through any sort of trauma or health issue, and it would be just one about strength. You have strength that you don't even know that you have, and it will come out at the right time when you need it. It may not be when you ask for it straight away, but the strength is there, and I think it's within everybody. I'm no different to anybody. I just dealt with a situation that was dealt to me, and the strength it's there. It's you more than you know.
Beautiful. Well, I agree 100%. I'm so grateful for you, Lindsay. I hope it's a wonderful day there. It's got to be getting close to nighttime.
bedtime, Sam. It's nearly my bedtime, yeah. And bedtime for birds.
What is it? 6 o'clock there?
No, it's 8:30.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize you were that far ahead.
Yeah. And I've got to put the bird to bed now.
Yeah. Do you sleep with the bird?
No, I do not.
Cuddle up?
He talks a lot. I think he'd talk all night if I tried to sleep with him. No, I don't do that.
That's funny. Hey, well, I will just express my gratitude for you, and I'm excited to have this go out and share it with the world and share your story. Absolutely inspiring. Please go to her websites, go follow her on Instagram, and just be part of the community. Be part of witnessing this transformation, and not just her life, but in all of the people she's impacting. I love that you're able to take what you originally were a little ashamed of and turn it into transforming lives across the world. It's just a beautiful story and beautiful experience. So thank you so much, Lyndsay Mitcheson. And I am Sam Knickerbocker with the Fuel Your Legacy Show. If you have not yet subscribed to this podcast, just click subscribe, go leave a link, like a comment, a review. And that's how more people get to hear this message, and share it with somebody that you love that could benefit from a portion of the conversation today. There's lots of topics, so as long as they're going to benefit from one, that's awesome.
Call now, don't hesitate. 385-323-2493. Change your fate.